Let's get started. So, today I'm going to talk about the perils of creating unconsciously. And what I mean by that is that I personally believe that every single human being is infinitely creative. In fact, when I say the word spirituality, I mean infinite creative capacity or infinite imaginative capacity. And so I come from the position that each individual human being, through their consciousness, is able to recreate and create the world over and over and over again. Now, what do I mean by that? Do I mean everybody's God or gods or whatever the case may be? That some people say, no, I don't mean that. What I do mean is that we've been endowed with the ability to imagine, and we can look at anything any way that we want to look at it. I've learned that from conversations with people when I used to preach. Sometimes I would preach a sermon and I knew what I meant, and somebody would come back to me and tell me what they heard and they didn't match. And that was that person using their creative capacity to recreate what I thought I created. And that's just a small example. And I'm sure if you've ever been in a conversation or an argument with somebody and you think you expressed yourself clearly and someone else heard something completely different or took it some other kind of way, then you see that process at work. So fundamentally, we all have the capacity to look at anything that we see or bear witness to in our own unique ways that are often informed by how we came into the world, our culture, our the books we've read, the things that we've studied, the religions that we've participated in. All of us have these imaginative capacities that have usually been informed by something else that then we project onto the things that we witness. It's a rare person, if anyone, who looks at something, sees it for what it is, and their mind doesn't make some story up about whatever that symbol means. I'll use these many books that I have for an example, plus books that I have in my like storage place, plus books on my desk, and even books on the floor. Each one of those books is indicative of a person who lived a life, had a bunch of experiences, and took those experiences and they created something from it. They wrote a book that had expounded on certain ideas they had, experiences they had, things they were curious about. And that person who wrote that book was informed by an infinitude of other relations between other beings that informed the person they became, that they then project into the book. Then, if I read that book, I'm taking all of that influence into myself and then taking that influence. And then, if I write something about the book or those ideas from the book end up shaping how I see the world, then it continues to express and express and express and express. Hopefully, that makes sense. So, the problem is that many of us are unconsciously creative. We're all creative. There's no such thing as that. I've heard people say, well, I'm not creative. And usually what I say to them was like, have you ever farted before? And they always think that that's a little extra. But I say, hey, creation is bringing something to an existence that was not in existence before. You can't help but be creative. Your very existence is a part of a creative enterprise that is connected to everything else, and everything you do is part of a creative enterprise. We can't escape it. What we can do is we can be conscious creators or we can be unconscious creators. Many of us, especially if you think you're not creative, then you're automatically an unconscious creator because you're already doing things all the time informed by things that if you haven't examined your life or examined your choices or paying attention to what you're doing, then you're creating from a place of an unexamined life that I think it was Socrates said wasn't worth living. So my invitation for you today is to consider, even if it's for 1 minute today, to be consciously creative. To even if it's something as simple as drawing a circle on a piece of paper, pay attention to the fact that you can even do that. And pay attention to the fact that even the idea of circle is an idea that comes from a creative enterprise. Yes, circles, I don't think perfect is a rare, I guess in ripples in the water and stuff like that, but even the circle itself is a conceptual idea that gets transmitted throughout our society, all of our societies, based on something observable in nature. But it's a continual expression, a continual outflowering. So something as simple as drawing a circle is connecting you to something greater than the circle itself. The whole concept and the symbolism behind it. I don't want to beat this dead horse. The point is that we all are part of this creative enterprise, but so few of us are consciously a part of it that by being unconscious creators, we end up creating often a lot of discord and lack of harmony, confusion, and all sorts of things because we're constantly putting out but not paying attention and being mindful of what we're putting out. And at the same time, we become easily manipulable by people who are conscious creators. Like we look at all the ways that we are influenced by people online or even people doing what I'm doing right now. But a lot of times, folks, they don't care about your mindfulness or how you're developing and things like that. They just want your clicks, they want your likes, they want to basically control you because they know that you are funky. I was going to say, I'm trying not to cuss, messing around. And because my uncle told me that he watched one of my videos and he was disappointed that I cussed, so I'm trying to do better. But at any rate, basically they know that you're not a conscious creator, so they can use the very same powers that you have to manipulate you and get you to do whatever they want you to do because they know you're not paying attention. They know you don't know how powerful you are. They know you don't know yourself as a creative being. And so they manipulate you and they do all sorts of things that maybe they're not even thinking about it. They just know if I do this, then that person does that. And they're not consciously trying to harm you, but still they are anyway. And you're complicit in your own harm by not being a mindful human being. If you're not a mindful human being, I figure anybody who watches my videos is a mindful human being. So it's more about being hyper vigilant and then being able to engage other people in the world who may be less aware and figuring out ways of spreading this good news, not the gospel of Jesus Christ or anything like that. I don't mean it that way, but spreading this good news that we are infinitely creative beings, which I think is what Jesus came to teach us, to tell us how creative we actually are, how powerful we are, how loved we are, and that we can create from that place. I've been thinking of all the different ways to encounter some of the things that I'm witnessing in our society, and I'm trying to lean more into the loving, encouraging, inspiring way because I already went through the anger way. And part of doing that is telling you, reminding you of your capacity and that you can test those capacities out in very small things. You can put a puzzle together and take time and meditatively put a puzzle together and be mindful that behind that puzzle is whatever the image that the puzzle was taken of. The company that stamped the puzzle and made it into little pieces and then broke it apart. Whoever designed the ideas of puzzles in the first place, and then you engaging actively and consciously and putting those pieces together shows you that you have the capacity to make connections and to see the bigger picture. And you can ask yourself, where am I not making connections in my life? Because of much of life functions in the same way. So where am I not making connections in life? How can I make these connections and see more of the big picture? What do I need to do to be able to do that? That is even being consciously and intentionally creative or participate in a creative enterprise. This isn't a very exciting conversation, but it's something that I hope you can contemplate on because every single day I'm watching people, what I would say, miscreate, doing things that harm themselves unconsciously with no mindfulness. Like I just found out there was a LGBTQ MAGA cruise, right? Why? Why is there LGBTQ MAGA cruise? That makes no sense for there to be an LGBTQ MAGA cruise. But a lot of these people, from my perspective, who participate and are complicit in their own systems of oppression, they do so because of unconsciousness. They do so because they don't contemplate. They do so because they've bought into the narrative that they are a lesser being, and now they're activated in their amygdala to their fawn survival instinct. So they're fawning over the very people that harm them because they're trying to communicate to the person, look, I'm not a threat. I'm not a threat. I'm not a threat. Just let me be safe. And then they create from that place. And so they say, hey, let's go on a cruise. What kind of cruise is a cruise to celebrate a community that does not like you? It would be like a Latinos for Trump cruise or Blacks for Trump cruise or like something like that, which I can totally see happening because these people are unconscious creators. They're operating from activated amygdala, deep, deep fear, and from in a primal pre-verbal place where they are disconnected from themselves because probably their parents slapped the hell out of them. I don't know what the heck it was, but something activated something in them that they triggered this fawn survival instinct that has them acting this way. But if they were more conscious creators and they were able to be bear witness and put together the pieces, they would be able to see, hey, hold on, something's not right here. These folks don't like me and don't want me to exist. I probably should not be supporting them. I should probably work, do something different. But unfortunately, many of us, as I've been stating in my previous videos, and this in some way is a continuation of it, is that we are stuck in our survival instincts. And because of the fact that we're still alive, we think our survival instincts have kept us alive, but it's not actually true. We're just alive because we're alive. And our survival instincts have, maybe they worked in some instance, but to the degree that you are living with your survival instincts being your prime directive is the degree to which you are actually not alive. And I'm hoping that the people who watch these videos are not those people, but not is, how should I say this? You're welcome, but I don't think it'll make sense if you're one of those people. If you do, if it does make sense, I invite you to consider that when you're engaging other people, the degree to which they might be trapped in their amygdala and you will not be able to convince them of anything differently. Only thing you can do is create better. Only thing you can do, as Buckminster Fuller says, you can't change things by fighting the existing reality. You have to create a new reality that makes the old reality obsolete. So if we're able to know that these people are stuck in their amygdalas and they're unconsciously creating, we, if we're being mindful, can consciously create new and safer spaces for people to calm down their amygdalas, see more clearly what the situation is, and be able to consciously create from a better, more calmed state of being. That might be a long trajectory. I don't know. I think like this normally. So sometimes I say things and I think that they make perfect sense to other people, and sometimes they don't. But essentially, let's just say like this: can a person make a clear decision if they're being chased by a dog running down the street and then you ask them some questions? They're not going to be able to answer you because all of their brain power is trying to survive. So now imagine that you got billions of people probably stuck in their amygdala, always in survival mode, trying to survive. They can't make freaking clear decisions, bruh. They just can't. And it's not an indictment on them, it's that they cannot. And then what ends up happening is some of us who have the space and the capacity to actually regulate ourselves and make calmer decisions and clearer decisions and create more consciously and intentionally, we get triggered by these folks who are all day triggered. And then we come at them with this energy that then they go deeper into their psychosis and then they get even more entrenched. And it's like I've tried to figure out ways to articulate this to people. Even when I was working in the bridging space more actively, I would tell folks like, what you're doing is not going to work because those folks are triggered. They're coming to the conversation triggered. Like you cannot expect to be in a conversation with somebody who is in survival mode and expect them to make rational decisions. It's not going to happen. Like you see these people, some of the people, the reason why that meme of Trump is Jesus activated them is because of all the things that they're terrified of. They're terrified of hell more than anything. And so since they're terrified of hell, Trump went so far as to portray himself as Jesus, and now they're scared because we get taught when we're evangelicals, and I got taught this too. If you deny Christ before humanity, then Christ will deny us before God. And so those people are so terrified of hell is what they're scared of. The reason why they're saying these things like now he's drawing the line and stuff like that is because they're scared that they're gonna die and burn in hell, and their only hope in life, because they don't hope anything for this life. Their whole hope is they've relegated their whole consciousness, their whole ability to create from a certain mindset, they've relegated it to heaven. They don't think that they can achieve anything in this world. They can only survive this world and go to heaven and then live the life that they may wish they could have here, or whatever the case may be. You got to be in it to know what I'm talking about 100%. or they can have a crap life here or a mediocre life here and go to the worst place, right? No one wants to go to the bad place. So everything they do in their mind is trying to get to heaven. They follow whoever tells them to follow because that's where all they have outsourced all of their imaginative capacity to that world, and they don't think they can pull it off here. So when this dude portrayed himself as Jesus, they still gonna follow this dude. Believe me, they are not going to change because racism and misogyny and all the other things that make them feel safe. But they're going to sit there because they think they can trick God. So they say, oh, he's gone too far because they're thinking not God's listening. God's going to hear me say that Trump went too far and I'm going to trick God, but I'm still going to be the same. And this is like, sounds like a ramble. It's not a ramble. I'm like Trump said, it's the weave. No, it's the awareness that I have from growing up in that space. And I'm telling you that this is how these people think. He's only gone too far in the sense that they think they might follow him into hell at this point. They'll follow him to the edge, but not all the way in. And that is why they have stopped at the meme, if that makes sense. And they are now scrambling, trying to make sense of this choice that they've made to follow this person to the gates of hell, but they don't want to follow this fool into hell. That's their mindset. That's where they've relegated their imaginative capacity. That's how terrified they are. And that's why you cannot talk. I'm talking about the Christian ones, the gay ones, the black ones, the Latino ones. All of them are in that fawn state of consciousness, that fawning state of survival instincts, just saying, they're trying to communicate is I'm safe. I'm not one of the bad ones. Please don't kill me. That's all they're trying to say. And they'll do anything to celebrate, but they're very terrified. They're completely terrified, but they're just pretending. They don't know they're terrified. They actually think they love it, but they're terrified, terrified, terrified. And they have not learned to consciously create. So everything they're doing is just unconsciously emerging from a shutdown amygdala that is stuck in survival mode. And those of us who know better at any level cannot try to convince them. We have to create something that's better, more conscious, more intentional, that takes them into consideration, because as long as they're not taken into consideration, they're going to be just stuck in their fear. But every once in a while, somebody is going to get pushed out and they're going to want to come into a safer space because surviving is their priority. And as much as I want to just tell them go to hell, honestly, I don't think that's the way to go. I think the way to go is to consciously and intentionally create spaces, even for people. You don't go to them and try to convince them. You just create. You just create from a place of consciousness, because there's definitely enough resources for everyone to survive and live a good life. That's another thing that Buckminster Fuller said, that we're at a point where every human being on earth could have a higher standard of living than anyone in history. It's just distribution and not having like greedy people in charge of everything. Blah 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 blah. Get conscious, be intentional, create from a place of wholeness that reflects our highest capacities. Create invitations for folks who may be terrified, not because you're trying to convince them, but because eventually this whole thing that is this house of cards that people are following, this MAGA, is going to fall apart. And when it falls apart, you're going to have a lot of MAGA refugees, and they're going to be coming at the door trying to get into spaces. And if we don't create intentional spaces for them, not for the way they think, but just for them as human beings, when they start to trickle in, we will get activated because we will be operating from the not enough, limited mindset and all that other stuff. And there won't be room for them. We have to create enough space in our consciousness and our mindfulness and knowing that we're not under threat, in the consciousness sense, so that when these refugees from MAGA start trying to make their way back to some semblance of sanity, to the degree that they can, we can't have it so self-contained that we just get re-triggered into survival instincts. We have to create better. So that is basically what I mean by the perils of unconscious creating. But there's also possibilities of consciously creating. And so that's what I want to leave you with. Think about the possibilities of consciously creating and let's not continue to surrender to the perils of unconsciously creating. Hopefully that journey, I'm like coming straight from the top of the dome meaning the top of my head, so I'm not like organized when I'm saying this, but it is organized in my consciousness and in my being. So I'm just kind of continuing to do these like kind of streams of consciousness where I'm just saying what comes to me, functioning from inspiration, and just kind of trusting that it's going to land where it's supposed to land. And it helps me for the writing because I've been writing a buttload. I haven't put it all out because I want to get my thoughts even more clear when it comes to this survival instinct paradigms that I'm talking about. And I will be writing a lot of more about survival instincts because I've definitely identified that as the reason why so many of us are missing each other is because we're seeing nothing but threats. And we need to clear our vision and be able to see beyond this into greater possibilities. So that's what I got to offer today. And hopefully I'll finish this freaking article that I've been writing for like 11 days. And maybe it'll serve somebody. Peace be unto you.